Thank you for being here with us. My name is Christina Smith, so I'm just a volunteer with the SVRN network, and I'm a graduate student in international education policy at the University of Maryland. And so I'm here talking to David Kemper, who's the, I believe, founder and director. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, awesome. Of Refugees to College. So, David, just to get started, would you mind giving us an overview of what Refugees to College is?
Sure. The intention behind the project, which was started in the summer of 2016, started out of a sum of initiative, just thinking about at least my background and one of my friends. I come, maybe you'll eventually hear it in my accent, but I come from very northern Minnesota, which is not particularly the most ethnically diverse place. And even so, it's a pretty cocooned environment. And I was just sort of taken in some of the rhetoric that was going around at the time, considering just my sort of culture shock that I came when I started to attend the University of Michigan, where I had never spoken to someone who was a Muslim before, or someone who grew up in the Middle East. Those were experiences that I did not necessarily have. So in hearing that rhetoric and then also being able to discuss with certain people their background, their culture, their understanding of things, that was something that was really interesting. But then I read something in the New York Times, funny enough, about a girl that who was a refugee who graduated from, I believe, Wesleyan. And I thought, well, that's rather interesting. How does that work? Because I know that there was citizenship questions that made it difficult to apply. And just out of my own interest, I started to do a little bit of research. And I was sort of flabbergasted at the fact about the resettlement process, how long the federal government was able to give support to certain private contractors, like here in Michigan, we've got Samaritas or Jewish Family Services, and they only work for about 90 days. And in those 90 days, they try to make sure that they can get just a basic job. We wanted to help out in that first leg. It became glaringly obvious that there was a second tier of individuals who were engineers, who were physicians, or even worked as engineers, physicians, dentists for the US Army in Iraq or in Afghanistan, that were now doing work that, gave them a paycheck, but was not what they enjoyed doing. And most importantly, it's not what they had trained to do for much of their life, and then were stricken by war and famine and such. So this was an area of work that I realized back in 2016, early 2017, that this is the gaping hole within the aid that these individuals need. Instead of sort of doing a Disraeli muddling through, just sort of kind of stumbling around and like, oh, eventually we'll get there. I thought that instead of having to have the social capital be on those refugees to kind of have their friends and their family kind of come to there, maybe there's some institution that can be made that can help aid them in that process of like, well, okay, these are the institutions you're thinking about. Okay, this is how you apply for postgraduate education. And every once in a while, we took on someone right out of high school. But then again, there's a lot of these college prep programs, even at high school. Maybe it's not, the best, but there's a teacher there that's going to, oh, here's some help, right? There's no individual who's 35 that is unable to kind of go and wants to become a prosthodontist, as an example of someone who's helped, and needs to practice dentistry, has his own practice in Syria, but just didn't go that way. So that's the initiative. There's a gaping hole within this particular area of refugee aid, and most importantly, they often practice it for many years, but because of the credentialism based within the United States and the way that you sort of have a gilded culture, that you don't have access to that. So they often have to go back. And so that's what we have to do.
So, just to understand the structure of the organization a little bit better, is it sounds like this was student run.
Yes.
Did you also have paid staff members, external volunteers?
We never had paid staff members, but it's been entirely voluntarily run. We tried to recruit from a variety of different places. It was my friend and myself. We met in the music school. I was in the music school at the University of Michigan, and we had this idea that I had this idea, and we kind of came across one another, and I sort of shot it to him one day, and he became my vice director, and then we just recruited heavily from the campus. And my brother came in, who's also a student, and he does sort of more of like the website, but he also helps on some stuff with regards to business school. He's in that arena. Um, my significant other came in, another individual. We had a variety of different people, again, from different campuses that we recruited from. We did a little bit of the Greek life circuit, just to open it up. I was also doing some stuff within the Catholic Church here. I tried to recruit from them because the Jesuits, as one, I think we want to give to charity a little bit. So I thought maybe that would be easy. I had a lot of the members of the water polo team. I played water polo at Michigan. We helped out. So it was sort of like a total team effort, where I would just like, hey, come on in, let's go. If you want to sign up, let's get in. But again, it was just being able to stand there and say, this is what we want to do, and this is our goal in mind. The general structure of the organization starts with that right now we have 4 members who sit at the top. And what we usually do, we only have 6 members working right now. And we're spread out around the country. But at one point, and it's mostly due to COVID that made things a little bit more difficult, where you needed to downsize, and then plus people were graduating, and so we were trying to move that forward. But we're still, doing the necessary aid that will come, as a student might be able to do as a college student. The way that we had it structured and have it structured is that we meet usually once a month, and we get together in this small group and we pass ideas off of, hey, we have this refugee, and we sit down at the beginning of the meeting, we see how many people have contacted us. Sadly, we can't take everyone because I'm kind of amazed and also kind of saddened at the same time at how many things we come into, or people email us, I need help, I'm in Kenya and that. So we're trying to I want to help everyone, but it's very difficult to do. And so we have to take only so many people that we think might be successful given their particular background. We have a consultation with them. It's usually myself or my vice director, and we have a communication with them. We just discuss, where are you at, where you want to go, what's your situation. And then we come back to the drawing board, and if we accept that person, then we accept that person based on certain things. Like, again, if their ability to, it's not a question of payment. We make sure that that's not on the table, but do they have the necessary English background? If they don't, what we usually do is if they're in the United States, we help them with community colleges, or we find them with ESL programs within the area. And we'll reach out to those ESL programs and we'll say, hey, here's an individual meet this particular group. They might be able to help you with ESL. So it's not like we're trying to throw anyone off the road. But then if that's the case, then we have certain people who have certain skills in certain areas, like business, or myself, more in the sciences or in MCAT or LSAT. And so we kind of push that arena. So I help with dentistry and medical school or nursing, or, applying to law school, because there's plenty of human rights lawyers that come up we had one from Mexico. And then there's that. And then there's other people who just like, hey, because of our degree programs back home, I took a massive test. I was told, this is your degree program. And I've studied computer science. I hate computer science, but that's what I was told to study. So we think, well, what do you want to do? And so we kind of help them get back into that particular arena and guide them and say, well, what do you like here? What do you like here? And so a lot of it is based on the consultant, because at the end of the day, each individual cannot be necessarily put entirely into one box. There's things that you can share, but each situation is somewhat different. You're going to have financial things that are pretty much the same, but each interest is different. Given where they're at in the moment is different. Familial questions are different. They have, 3 kids, 2 of them very young. That's a different question. Again, it's English level. That's another important one. So it's not a one size fits all, which is why when we come back once per month, we have a discussion of like, hey, do you have any questions? And we're open as well throughout that time to discuss with different people. That's usually how it works. And again, it's ongoing consultations. After that, we consider it like a mentorship program. I still keep in contact with people. There's a guy, a Syrian refugee that we helped, who's now doing his prosthodontics at the University of Alabama. He was a dentist for many years in Damascus. And he wanted to go back. Now he's able to do that. But He's now, again, he's studying there. And so we, reached out to the programs. We had people that connected with him. He had a few mentors that we could connect with here in the States. And yeah, that's sort of how at least the structure goes.
You said that you come back once a month. Is that like in the beginning they have monthly consultations before you match them with a mentor, or?
So we try to have meetings once a week. The consultant has a meeting once a week with him, works through the action plan, and the action plan is designed specifically for that individual. You might borrow some things because at least there is a bit of a union of financial questions or ELI, but each action plan is entirely tailored to exactly what that person needs.
And that's done with the consultant.
And that's done with the consultant, exactly. We come back every month because, again, there might be someone who is like, I'm stuck on this. I don't know who to contact here. Okay, maybe you can move this here, or, maybe contact this individual. Or if their English is ELI problems, maybe we can do like a Duolingo. Or there's a problem with childcare. That's another thing. It's like, of course, you need to set a limiting principle, but eventually you realize that getting a good job because of college education and being a dentist or whatever it might be necessarily holds ramifications for their families. And so, the child care service or whatever it might be, so that they can attend classes. We as a group come back once a month and say, hey, any confusions? What can we do? We also say, what new cases can we take on? What new cases can we? And it really depends on how long, right? If someone wants to go, if we can try to get them into a community college, as is usually a good first step, so that they can at least lay the groundwork of how education works here in the United States. That's often a first step. And that, working through that will take probably about a month, 2 months. And then seeing when the cycle rolls through, they can get in. But again, sometimes you just wait and they go in the back door. You can take on new cases, but usually you're talking about maybe 3 or 4 per person, 3, 4, 5 per person. Depends on the person. But and it depends on what the workload is of that particular individual, of the particular client that needs to be aided. But yeah, that's how it works. Ongoing, once a week. I sometimes like to do twice a week, 3 times a week. I'm pretty relaxed on that, just because I want to make sure that there's ongoing communication. There's no miscommunication on our end. Baby steps, little small goals along the way make a big difference. And eventually you look back and you realize, holy smokes, I swear I didn't know we got this far. That's how it.
Well, I think that's ideal though, right? That you
Right,
are
exactly.
individual
Exactly.
support to each person.
Right.
I just want to touch on the mentorship aspect though,
Sure.
because you said after these multiple consultations, it turns into a mentorship program of sorts. But
Yeah.
each person could potentially have multiple mentors. But at the same time, you said people are all over the country and potentially in other parts of the world even.
Right.
So are your mentors primarily within Ann Arbor, or do you have mentors who extend throughout this network?
I guess when I say mentorship, I mean mentoring and guiding about what you want to do in the future. I'm not a dentist. I don't know how to be a dentist. Nonetheless, a lot of refugees come to the country and they have to make their own social capital. And that alone, in this now COVID especially, but even before, it's not easy, right? And just having someone there to say, hey, how you doing? How was work today? How was school? Again, it's just an ongoing communication. It kind of turns into a, how you doing? How you holding up? Do you need any help? Can I help you with childcare situation? Or, rents in this area is pretty expensive if you're looking to go to college here. Like maybe you look in this area. Maybe I'm going above and beyond my own case, but you become friends with them, and you want to do everything you possibly can to make sure that they're aided in a way, or at least they're supported, and at least we have social capital, right? When I'm saying social capital, I mean that the simple argument is, how many times, if I lost my apartment, how many times would I be able to have to sleep on someone's couch, and would I be able to do that? If I can do that, that means I have a certain amount of social capital built up. If that individual lost his house or her house, how many people can he or she request to stay on someone's couch? This is a means of building social capital that I think is important, especially in the sort of computerized world of today. but
On the professional connections as well.
exactly.
So it sounds like the role of consultant and mentor kind of blend together in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
So just to finally clarify that, your mentors are primarily in the Ann Arbor area, and they're
Correct.
mostly working with people over Zoom.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
great. Or FaceTime or some other video platform.
Correct. Yes.
Then turning to the students, how are you found by clients?
We are found primarily via our website.
Okay.
Um, we don't have much of a social media presence, only insofar as that we actually have more requests coming in than we do have output. And to be honest, I think we're just so focused on trying to improve. Social media is meant to be as sort of as a marketing tool, and I understand that there's something important about that. I've never been one for social media personally, and maybe it's just that since I had this thing, I kind of neglect the social media aspect. Maybe that's a bad angle. I can certainly be critiqued otherwise, because I know that that's maybe blasphemy in this world as a 22-year-old, 23-year-old, that I'm not a huge social media guy, but nonetheless, they often come to us for two ways. As is standard on the UK system or the Spanish system, it's out of 20 on a GPA or on a grading scale. Across the world, there's different grading scales on a 5.0, a 4.0, a 3.5, different ways that these are graded. So when you get to the United States, you have to have that translated or transferred or accredited. When they get accredited, we have a few different agencies that we work with. One specifically, that's ECE. They're based out of Milwaukee, and we work with them, and they help accredit. If like, hey, here's a guy who went to undergrad at University of Tehran. I need to have this. Can you accredit this? Okay, yes, and they take the transcript and they accredit it, and they also will send people our way. If someone contacts them and says, hey, we need a fee waiver or something like that, and usually that's how we can get in contact. People contact us through our website. That's the big one. The other one that we really connect with is that we're on the UN Refugee Coalition, and it's a group of different organizations. And it's also a great thing for us because we can communicate with other agencies and institutions, schools. I believe MIT is on that list. Yale, I think, is also on that list. I want to say Arizona State is on that list. There's a million different. Michigan, I know, is on there. A variety of different institutions. And so sometimes people will find us through that, or an institution on that website will say, hey, I have this, and then they see us and they dump us our way. And those are usually people like, it's someone that it's a group of people I wish I could help more, but there are individuals who are living currently in refugee camps in Kenya or on the Sudanese border. That's very difficult because even insofar they have the UNHCR education system in the camps themselves, and they want to go to college. So that would be if a student is watching this and wants to help and have their own area, which I guarantee you is no one is aiding right now and needs help. It's working with a variety of different people within these refugee camps that want to go to college. But the issue is that they're stuck, not just within the refugee camps, but if they got a student visa, they can make it work, right? There's a way to make that work. And I think that, it's not to say that of course we need help, that would be great, but nonetheless, if you're looking for a niche area that needs people to help, that's an area. And it's surprising how many people reach out from that area that need help.
This is helpful, and you've actually managed to answer the majority of my questions, which is good because we're at time. But
Okay.
if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you one final thing.
Sure.
So for people who might want to bring a program like this to another city, or just replicate it, it sounds like it's pretty virtual and
Yeah.
anyway. But for
Yeah.
people who want to replicate it, you touched on this a little bit.
Right.
You mentioned certain areas where they should begin looking for clients, but
Right.
what would you say are some things that they can do right now to get this going?
So first off, people are going to jump to, I need to get this government stamped 501c3. You don't. It's nice. I get it. It is nice. I agree, because it helps with donations and then the tax write-offs. But the first thing that I would do is the thing that we did, and it helped us immensely. And it's also people, it's another group of students that we do get from them. It's not as much, but do it. In every area, there's a refugee resettlement agency. Here in Michigan, it's Samaris, where there's a large Arab American population that a lot of Chaldean immigrants and Iraqi immigrants. So there is a need here in Michigan. I grant you that. But across the United States, if you're talking about California, if you're talking about in New York or elsewhere, there is a refugee resettlement agency, and I guarantee you 100% that after those 90 days where they're unable to aid them, at least here for financial reasons and such, there are going to be groups of people that say, wait, hold on, I want to do more, right? I want to go to college. There was an individual who we helped in Los Angeles who was an engineer who was like, wait a second. He told me, he goes, wait a second, I'm flipping burgers at In-N-Out. I mean, it's not like, I'm getting a paycheck, but nonetheless, I want to go back to school. And when he was told by the Refugee Resettlement Agency, I can't, oh, well, he was kind of like, oh, reach out to them, reach out to those agencies. There's usually someone there that will help, but that you can communicate with. You can also reach out to me. We're actually trying to set up a few. We had one that I'm trying to work actually right now at the University of Colorado Boulder. We're trying to set up one there. Reached out to them. An individual recently reached out to us from Arizona State. I'm going to try to make sure that can be pushed. But if you want to do this on your own, I would first, if you want to get students, reach out to the refugee resettlement agencies. Those are important institutions. There's a Ignatian spiritual network. As I said, I'm Catholic, I'm a Jesuit, but the Jesuits do a lot of work in this area as well. And the Ignatian Spiritual Network is a global network, and they really like to help as well, and they help resettled refugees across the United States. So that would be another one that I would look in if you're at all interested. And for recruiting students, I would do a mass meeting of some sort. Eventually, you're going to have a certain amount of momentum that's going to come in, but eventually, you have to be very careful about. You're going to have people's lives and their futures, at least guiding them a bit in your hands. You have families, right? People who are going to struggle to pay rent, and it's very incumbent that I would think, put a bulwark in front. That was something that I learned the hard way. Ensuring that you're selecting the right people, actually, and making a more of a hiring process than you do have it just be like, come into the org, guys, and make it a selection. Because although I guarantee you probably want to have as many people sign up, I guarantee you it's going to take 2 weeks, and then people are going to fall off, and people are not going to follow up, and it's going to turn into a mess. So put that into the bulwark up front, and I think that'll be okay.
Well, thank you. Is there anything else that I didn't ask you or that you just want to put out there about the program?
I'm kind of amazed that anyone would even kind of reach out in the first place. I really it's kind of amazing that there's even people like yourselves who are willing to kind of communicate, and I'm grateful on that front.
Well, it sounds like a great program. So we're really grateful to know about it.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you again for taking
Thank you for doing all this. This has been a lot of fun.